So a few months ago, I made a video called The Japanese Urban Legends Iceberg Explained, and honestly, it's one of the best videos I ever made. I mentioned a few yokai, and then people kept suggesting me to talk about other yokai, and oh my word is there a ton of yokai that I haven't spoken about. Before we get into things, how many Wikipedia pages do you think there are on individual yokai? Pause the video and leave your answer in the comments, because I'll tell you now, it is 160. That's a lot to get through. And that's nothing compared to the amount of yokai on yokai.com, where I got a lot of the information I'm going to tell you guys today. So here we are. We're going to delve back into the Far East to talk about Japan's terrifying yokai. I'm genuinely excited for this. Let's do it. First up, Amanojaku. So these are weird imp creatures that apparently have been known about for longer than the written history of Japan. They're definitely on the pure evil side of yokai, sometimes being referred to as minor oni. They bring out the worst of mankind, releasing the dark and deep desires within a man's heart. Now, they actually have a very long history. As I said, they've allegedly been around for longer than the written history of Japan, predating Buddhism in the region, and actually being featured in Buddhist imagery, often as symbols of wickedness being defeated by righteousness. So we've established that these are some of the oldest yokai native to Japan, but where did they actually come from? Well, that's actually a bit of a mystery in itself, though it's believed that they developed out of the evil Shinto deities. If you don't know, the Shinto religion has been around for over 1,000 years, having its own practices and believing in kami, which are divinities, deities, and spirits, etc. These were first recorded in the early 700s, but obviously many of the folk tales would have been around for a lot longer than that, the Amanojaku likely being one of them. Now, I mentioned that they are pure evil, and this is totally true. There is a story where a woman was due to get married and accidentally let one into her house many years ago, and it invaded, killing the young woman, flaying her alive and wearing her face as a mask while pretending to be her in the lead up to the wedding, before finally getting ratted out by a bird, I think it was like a crow or a raven, and getting chased down by the entire village, being beaten to death with sticks and stones by the grieving village people. Completely wild story, and that's just one. I still have so many stories to get onto, so let's move on to them. Gashodokuro, translated to starving skeleton. This is the next Japanese yokai on our list. Now, what are some notable details about the Gashodokuro? For one, this thing is absolutely huge, reportedly being roughly 15 times larger than the average person. Secondly, this creature's history dates all the way back to the 10th century, which is something I really love about a lot of yokai. A lot of the time, their history is hundreds, if not 1,000 years old. Speaking of history, throughout the past 1,000 years, Japan, like every other country, has been at war, quite a lot actually. And it's said that the Gashodokuro are actually ghosts of people who died on the battlefield, but were not buried for one reason or another. Obviously, during war, a lot of people die, and over time it was said that their bones would fuse together, making them extremely large and also extremely vengeful spirits. So for this reason, they often, at the dead of night, will attack lone travelers, biting their heads off and drinking the blood as it spits out of them. Too large and powerful to be killed, Gashodokuro maintain their existence until the energy and malice stored up in their bodies has completely burnt out. They are fueled by revenge, fueled by anger. However, because of the large amount of dead bodies to require to form a single one, these abominations are said to be rarely seen today, at least compared to how they were in the past, when wars and famine were a part of everyday life. Today it's said that you'll rarely find a Gashodokuro, but in the rare chance that you do see one, it will likely be that no one will ever see you again. Arachnophobes, look away now, because the Jorōgumo is about to be spoken about next. And let's be fair here, spiders generally do very little damage unless you're off in a very exotic country, but are often seen as evil, and in the lore of yokai the same can be said. So what sets the Jorōgumo apart from other yokai? Well, interestingly, it's said that the creature can shapeshift into a beautiful woman like the kitsune, which I spoke about recently in a video. It could shapeshift between woman and fox. If you haven't put the pieces together yet, I've spoken about a lot of shapeshifting creatures on the channel before, and the general gist is that they lure men in with beauty before getting them alone and leading to the men's brutal demise. In the spider world, something very similar happens. Obviously not the shape-shifting part, but often male spiders are eaten after mating. The Jorōgumo doesn't wait that long though, eating them alive before they get the chance to do anything. Blue balls should be the least of these men's worries though, because it's only getting worse from here. Or maybe they won't get blue balls though, because according to yokai.com, its name can actually be translated to horse spider, so maybe something does go on, I don't know. Either way, they say that the men's demise is often as painful as humanly possible, because with being a spider comes spider powers, and it's said that the Jorōgumo has very strong webs that it will use to restrain men, and probably not in a kinky way, and venom which will weaken but not kill them. Probably not in a kinky way, keeping them alive for days while being systematically eaten alive piece by piece. Probably not in a kinky. If you're a man foolish enough to be tricked into getting caught by this evil yokai, your days are numbered. From evil spiders to evil trees, the Jubokko is the next yokai set to be discussed. And if we take things back to the Gashodokuro for a minute, you'll remember that the skeleton was created by the fusion of unburied corpses, usually found on battlefields. Well, the trees surrounding those battlefields hundreds and thousands of years ago would also participate in the supernatural. They appear on the former sites of large battlefields, beginning life as normal trees. But as the blood of the deceased seeps into the soil, its roots will suck up the blood of the dead, being fueled by the liquid found within human bodies, and changing the tree into a carnivorous fiend. Now having a taste for blood, from here on out, when a human decides to walk by the Jubokko, it's said that it will change its branches to the shape of a tube, sucking the blood out of the live victim. By drinking the essence of man, this will give it the elixir of life, with Jubokko trees that have been fed always appearing young. If the tree is ever cut, you won't see what you would usually find when cutting down a tree. No, if the tree is ever cut, it's said that blood will fall out, being like an even deadlier, more blood-hungry Venus flytrap. Taking from land to sea, the Nure Onna is a mysterious Japanese serpent-like yokai with the head of a woman and the body of a snake. So kind of like a mermaid, but in this instance a snake maid, set with features such as the forked tongue of a snake, but long black hair like a human that sticks to its dripping wet body. Now, with this video being titled Japanese Terrifying Yokai, you can be sure that this yokai is in fact evil. And if you ever see it in real life, it might already be too late for you. Now, they are often found on the shores of Kyushu, but legend has it that they've sometimes been found up as high as the Nagata prefecture. They are incredibly dangerous to say the least, said to consume humans as their main choice of meal if they can get away with it. Also being able to crush trees with their tails and using various other methods to trap people if they get too close, usually relying on their trickery and guile to feed. One way it's said that they feed, for example, is that they will transform themselves into a human female with a bundled up baby. This woman will then ask if you can hold her baby for a second, but don't you dare. For it's said that if you do hold the bundled baby, it will then weigh as much as a boulder, trapping you underneath its weight. And from there, it's all over, with the Nure Onna being said to drain the blood from its unfortunate victim, taking its time being free with a vulnerable and defenseless human. If you're on the shores next to Japanese waters, don't you believe mothers with newborn kids. Get away from them, because your life might depend on it. Oni Hitokuchi. If you don't know what Oni means, and I've actually spoken about it a few times before, it's a piece of Japanese folklore that often refers to giants. And so for that reason, the Oni Hitokuchi is a giant ogre in this case. But man, is this one a bad guy. I'm just going to leave you with this picture here, and you can kind of put two and two together. So in Japan, when people go missing, it's often blamed on the spirits. And sometimes this is called being spirited away. Now, sometimes these people come back with crazy stories of where they've been. Oftentimes, they don't. And in these instances, some people like to say that the Oni Hitokuchi may have eaten them. They're these big ogres that are said to be able to eat humans in a single bite, obviously never to be seen again. Now, there is actually a bit of reasoning behind this creature is theorized to exist, And again, this is only a theory, but back in the day, especially hundreds of years ago, whether it be due to war or famine, murder or disasters, people used to go missing a lot. And therefore, instead of leaving things open-ended, many people preferred to add this horribly morbid closure that creating this creature gave. It allowed not for denial, but at least an ending. Everyone knew the missing were gone, likely in a very sad and tragic way, but at least this would be an end to the chapter. Moving on, we have the Tenjo Kudari, a yokai native to the Yamanashi region of Japan, which, little known fact actually, I was looking for a study abroad year last year, and I was actually looking at Yamanashi to go. Things didn't work out in the end, but I've always wanted to go, so if I ever go to Japan, I'd like to hit up Yamanashi. If I were to have gone, I might have seen this thing though. A naked and ugly old woman with long dishevelled hair who spends most of her life living in a narrow crawl space of houses between the roof and the ceiling, just like my ex-girlfriend.
I haven't forgotten what you did to me, Samantha.
And yeah, she comes down late at night to scare the poor inhabitants of the house she's decided to call home. The legend was first documented by Toriyama Seiken, a 18th century scholar, poet, and folklore artist. He claimed that while not as bad as many of the more evil yokai, the Tenjo Kudari would often snatch unsuspecting people to eat, popping in and out of the roof like a flash, and with the people never to be seen again. Fittingly, during this time, there was a phrase commonly said in Japan which roughly translates as to show someone the ceiling, and this was a colloquial expression for causing trouble, which the Tenjo Kudari certainly does. The being doesn't have nearly as much background as some of the others on this list, but I thought it was a cool design and a cool little concept. Let's get on to the next yokai. Translated in English as Goldfish Ghost, the Kingyo No Yūrei is the next Japanese yokai up to bat. Which, the name suggests that these creatures are ghosts that have inhabited goldfish bodies. But not just any ghosts, these are the ghosts of murder victims, which must really suck. I mean, imagine you're murdered and you open your eyes and now you're a fucking goldfish. That would blow, man. Literally. Now, the goldfish's body takes on some features of the soul stuck inside it, becoming a comically grotesque amalgamation of human and fish. Because they're fueled by vengeance for their murder, they're kind of an onryo, and historically, their tales date back hundreds of years, all the way back to Santo Kyoden's story, Baika Hyoretsu, in which a young woman named Monohana is murdered and her soul becomes stuck in the body of a goldfish, making the tale roughly 250 years old. I really don't have too much more to say about this yokai. It's not nearly as popular as other ones, so it doesn't have many pictures online, but it does look a bit like Ponyo. Shiro Ukari, known as the White Ghost Floater. This yokai is yet another more niche legend and is on the less dangerous side of the spectrum, especially when comparing it to blood-sucking trees, carnivorous spiders, and starving skeletons. Instead, it generally wanders around aimlessly, and here's something interesting. The word Shiro means white, yes, but in Japanese it can actually refer to innocence or naivety. So it's not so terrifying as confused, we think. And I say we think because very little is actually known about this yokai. It's been around since the Edo period, so it originated sometime between the early 16 and mid 1800s. But people who claim to have seen the Shiro Ukari say that there's just this absent-mindedness that the being possesses, that it might be disconnected from the real world and there's no thought going on upstairs. There's actually this theory as to why, and the theory why these things are here is that it could be a spirit that could not pass on to the next life due to the weight of its sins. This traps the creature down on Earth, forever having to float around, doomed to never ascend to what comes next. So the next yokai I want to discuss is Tsurara Onna, otherwise known as the Icicle Woman, and this is actually my favourite story of the entire video. And the story goes like this. A single man was looking at icicles hanging under the eaves of his home and sighed, saying, "I'd like a wife as beautiful as these icicles." Which, pause, okay, first of all, what the fuck? How? But anyways, just as he wished, a beautiful woman appeared who wanted to be his wife. It seems like this is some sort of Siberian mermaid kind of thing where single men just look around at stuff and go crazy. But instead of seals, this time it's icicles, which is even weirder somehow. Now the story does actually continue, and it differs depending on the region of Japan that you are from. So if you are in the Niigata prefecture, the story goes that the man wanted his wife to have a bath. Maybe they were just gonna do something naughty, or maybe they had just done something naughty, but anyway, he forced her to bathe despite the fact that she did not want to. But after a while, he noticed she hadn't come out. And this story is so stupid. If you can't see where this is going, she was in the bath and she melted. But some other renditions of the story say that the man and the woman got married, but soon the woman mysteriously disappeared once winter turned to spring. I wonder why. The man thought that the woman had abandoned him, and so he married another. The seasons then went by. Spring turned into summer, summer to autumn, and autumn to winter once again. And as soon as the first snowflake fell upon the ground of Japan, the icicle woman once again returned. But this time, only to see the man that she had married in the arms of another. In a fit of jealous rage, she shapeshifted back into an icicle and stabbed the man to death. Very dangerous if you piss her off, but a good warning to never marry a woman who used to be an icicle. The next yokai featured in this video is called Mikoshi Nyudo, and once again this one dates all the way back to the Edo period, which is fascinating to me. It seems like this time period was a renaissance for folklore and legends in Japan. But what is the Mikoshi Nyudo? This is a bald-headed yokai with an apparently ever-extending neck. It can reach as far as its heart desires, frightening lone travelers with its unique size and abilities. What might an encounter with Mikoshi Nyudo look like? Well, usually they'll come across as a lone person like a harmless monk or priest, but soon they will show their true colours. The second the future victim makes eye contact with this beast, it'll grow its neck to be a gargantuan size, lunging forward soon after and attacking the poor person's throat, ripping it out with its razor-sharp teeth. If you run away, it will catch you. If you stand still, you're doomed from the get-go. If you avert your gaze, the result will be the same. The only way to make it out alive is to look upon this monster looking from head to toe, up to down, and to scream that you're not afraid of it, that it doesn't scare you. Apparently, this will cause it to walk away in anger and you will be left alive. One of the few people in history to escape the clutches of this pure evil being. Oh yeah, and this next one's pretty messed up. The Kosho is a yokai, but it's actually a bit more than that. It's an infectious disease. Yeah, I really don't know how you make a yokai out of the plague or herpes or this sperm-looking thing, but this parasite is one of the worst diseases you can get, because not only is it a parasite, but also it has a face which is creepy as shit, and it talks, apparently constantly chattering like a child. So I don't know what's going to kill you off first, the fact that it's in your body or the fact that it might piss you off to the point of suicide. If you don't off yourself though, this thing will do it for you because it is a terminal illness living between the heart and the diaphragm, and doctors, even with their best equipment, cannot get it out. So if you find the mythical Kosho inside you, apparently according to legend, death is imminent. The Reaper beckons. Of all the yokai I'm showing in this video, the Biron has to take the cake for the most gormless and goony of all of them. For sure, this thing is a gormless goon. Appearance-wise, Biron are an elongated, white, ghostly-looking yokai with drooping features, protruding teeth, and long tails. They have soft and flabby bodies with a gelatinous consistency. Luckily enough though, this is yet another yokai that you don't really need to worry about if you see. They're far from as harmful as some of the other terrifying yokai I have on this list. They enjoy scaring humans, yes, but compared to others, they won't actually do anything too bad. Now, historically, this yokai is actually very modern, at least compared to many of the others that are hundreds, if not 1,000 years old, with the first reported records of the Biron only dating back to 1972, but it might have been known for a little bit longer than that. The person who was the author of their first reporting, the late Sato Arifumi, said that he saw it in an Edo period picture scroll. So if he was telling the truth, this thing might have actually been around for years before we knew anything about it. Though, Sato said that he could no longer find the picture scroll that he saw it in, leading many to believe that this creature was a creation of Sato's. But this has definitely breathed a breath into the mystery of the origins of the Biron. Ooh, actually, I don't know. The next one might be my favourite yokai of the video. Forget the icicle woman. This one is fucking cool. This is the Kotobuki, and what makes it so cool is that it is every animal in the zodiac combined. So white girls, you'll love it too. It has the head of a rat, which is a bit of a weird choice, but anyway. The ears of a hare, the horns of an ox, the comb of a rooster, the bit of a sheep, the mane of a horse, the neck of a dragon, the back of a boar, the shoulders and the belly of a tiger, the front legs of a monkey, the rear legs of a dog, and the tail of a snake. Seriously, this thing looks like a modern gen Pokemon, but it actually has a much longer history than I'm giving it credit for, first being documented back in, and you might have guessed it, the Edo period. At the time, woodblock prints of it were popular gifts. Almost no explanation about the creature was included in these prints other than the fact that it was said to have come from India, so shout out to all the Indians watching this video. Other than that, in these prints it was declared that it could understand human speech and was called the Kotobuki. Merely possessing an image of the Kotobuki was thought to be enough to protect a person from sickness and disease, and in fact many people thought that it was a good luck charm, with the name Kotobuki actually being a celebratory or congratulatory word. So not exactly a terrifying yokai, but I definitely thought I should bring it up because this thing is straight up badass. Moving onwards, the Nure is one of the oldest yokai in Japanese history, potentially dating all the way back to the early 700s, though most of its records place it in the Heian period between the late 700s and the early 1100s. Oh, the history seen by the eyes of this legend is endless. I wanted to include it now because it's actually quite similar to the Kotobuki, and by this I mean that it's got a lot of different animal body parts rolled into one. It has the head of a monkey, the body of a tanuki, the tail of a snake, and the limbs of a tiger. So not as many, but actually we have some different animals here. Now the Nure has been rarely seen throughout history, with many people believing that it's a reclusive animal, but there is a legend that goes along with it. It was the closing years of the Heian period. It's said that the emperor became very ill, and this was attributed to an evil spirit in the area. So he asked skilled samurai Minamoto no Yūrei, armed with his legendary bow which he received from his ancestor Minamoto no Yūrei, which is a name you should remember for later. But anyway, he and his companion Ino Hayata were tasked to deal with this creature. During the night, a strange wind came over them, followed by a black cloud. Yūrei used his bow and fired an arrow into the clouds above the palace, and out from the sky came a horrible scream as the Nure dropped down to earth. Ino Hayata leaped upon the body, dealing it a finishing blow. The emperor immediately recovered from his illness and rewarded the heroes the legendary katana Shishio for their service. This event has ever since been immortalized in numerous paintings and prints. Moving on, Hyosube are the next creature set to be discussed, and these things are small little humanoids from Kyushu, and they're underwater cave-dwelling beings that come out at night to forage for eggplants, their favourite dish. Similar to how their cousin, the kappa, has a favourite dish of its own, with that being the cucumber, a fact that I didn't actually bring up when I covered them in the Asian Horror Stories video, which you should watch if you haven't already, it's great. The kappa and the Hyosube are actually quite close cousins according to legend, being seen as companions a lot, though the Hyosube might actually be the elder of the two, with apparently documentation going slightly back further than before the kappa. Physically, these creatures are short, with bold scalps, sharp claws, and a mouth full of sharp teeth, which are prominently visible due to the malicious smile that they wear. Their skins are covered with a pelt of thick, greasy hair that gathers dust, oil, and dirt. This repulsive pelt constantly sheds wherever they go. Other than that, what else do you need to know about them? Well, their name is said to come from the call that they make. They're rarely seen by humans, living in much more sparsely populated areas, but if you catch one on an off day, they can be a very nasty foe, being more mischievous than their cousins, which are already known for doing some pretty obscene stuff. But their cousins, the Kappa, usually have a sense of humour about things. According to legend, simply looking at a Hyosube might cause a terrible and contagious fever which can spread it into an epidemic. That's how COVID started, and it's actually said that any unlucky person that hears a Hyosube laugh, and who laughs himself, will be struck with a fever and die within hours. So it's important to be extremely cautious when in areas that Hyosube are known to inhabit. Very much different to their cousins, which, yeah, can be dicks at times, but they're nowhere near as bad as that. Well, usually, at least. Now, if there was ever a leader of demons in yokai lore, the Shuten Dōji would be it. This dude is the head honcho of Japanese spirits. He is the dreaded king of the Oni, known around the country as one of the most terrifying yokai there is to offer. His origin story is debated, but one of the more popular ones goes as such. Over 1,000 years ago, he was born a human boy in a small village, and around the local area he was supernaturally strong and abnormally intelligent, a real demigod among men. As he was different though, many people judged him, thinking him as weird. Some people even called him a demon child, and this would soon become a self-fulfilling prophecy, isolating the poor child, with even his own mother abandoning him. Orphaned, he became an apprentice priest in Kyoto, but being the smartest apprentice priest, he slacked off, he got into fights, and he showed a real poor attitude. It was around this time that he also fell into drinking, which was forbidden to monks, and he could outdrink everyone and anyone who was willing to sit down and drink against him. Because of his fondness for alcohol, he became known as Shuten Dōji, a nickname which means the little drunkard. The story goes on to say that he once showed up at a festival drunk with an Oni mask on, intending to prank the priests, but soon realised that the mask had fused to his face. He was kicked out of the clergy and ran away to the outskirts of Kyoto, for years in exile, stealing for a living. Living in exile, Shuten Dōji grew in power and knowledge. He mastered strange, dark magic, meeting a gang of bandits and allying with them. Eventually, he had a whole clan of Oni and yokai thugs who prowled the highways, terrorizing the people of Kyoto in a drunken rage. He plotted to conquer the capital and rule as emperor, and so he and his gang rampaged through Kyoto, capturing noble virgins, drinking their blood and eating their organs raw. They thought they would win the day when suddenly a band of heroes led by the legendary warrior Minamoto no Uematsu, ancestor of Minamoto no Uemasa, who slayed the Nue that I spoke about earlier, he and his battalion assaulted Shuten Dōji's palace, and with the help of some magical poison, they were able to assault the Oni band during a heavy bout of drinking. They cut off the drunken Shuten Dōji's head, and because the head belonged to an Oni and was unholy, it was buried outside of the city limits, at a mountain pass. The cup and bottle of poison that Minamoto no Uematsu used are said to be kept at Nariaiji Temple in Kyoto. Honestly, I love Japanese yokai, and I hope you do too. So I want to make another video about it, maybe a part 2, but only if there's a demand. So give this video a like, and if we get to like 1,500 or so, I'll chat more about some that I find. Only the best. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see that. I'm so close on 50k, please do sub. And follow me on all of my socials to keep yourself updated. Instagram, Twitter, Discord, and Patreon, they're all linked in the description. Finally, please let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see me do next, because I'm only 118 videos in, and I'm already out of ideas. Thank you for watching.